Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Happy Sunday, Toronto Maple Leafs fans. Welcome to Game Over Toronto. On a Sunday afternoon, I'm combating backlight. It's not usually bright outside when we record. I hope you had a great weekend. We haven't seen you since Friday evening. But today, in Pittsburgh, 6-5, a victory for the Maple Leafs over the Pittsburgh Penguins in a back-and-forth game that, like I said, might as well be called badminton with the amount of back-and-forth that this game had. Couple penalties that happened, a couple not so great penalty kills by the Maple Leafs, a number of last minute buzzer beaters, a number of goals to start the game that had all kinds of implications for the Penguins. And with 2 games to go before the trade deadline, the Leafs managed to scrape out another win in a game where they were not the better team. Beating the Pittsburgh Penguins, like I said, 6-5 in overtime. William Nylander with the game winner. So great game, great weekend. Bit of a weird weekend for the Maple Leafs, playing on the Friday evening and then a Sunday afternoon and then Monday to finish off a back-to-back. That will be against the Sharks. I hope that they play a little bit better against the Sharks than they did today, because tonight's game, the Leafs were having a little bit of the fits. And for the first time, I might have jinxed it last game, Dominic and I were talking about the really great goaltending that we've had and how the Leafs have been so lucky in the goaltending all year, and how I wasn't worried about the goaltending. Now, that's not to say that I am worried. But I will say that's probably the first game of Joseph Woll's career as one of the main starters for the Leafs where he was not the better goalie on the ice. He had a rough game. There were a couple of goals that he didn't really have any chances on, but there was at least 1 or 2 that I'm sure that he wishes he got back. And didn't get it back, but we scrape out the 2 points anyway. If we're being honest with ourselves, it's a good thing that the Leafs actually made it to overtime, because despite the fact that they did manage to fight back a little bit in the later half of that third period, for the latter part of that game, Pittsburgh just sort of felt inevitable and relentless. So we're going to talk all about that today. I'm going to take your questions at the end of the stream as well in our overtime period. But this is Game Over Toronto. Please make sure you hit like right down here. Make sure you hit subscribe. You can also check the links down below for our Patreon as well. We have a free subscription tier. You don't have to pay a dime. Obviously, if you're able to contribute, it really go a long way to help us. But we obviously understand times are tough. And you just being a member of our community is enough. As long as you hit like and subscribe, it would go a long way. So let's break this game down. Now, the first couple of minutes, the Leafs really came flying out of the cannon to start the whole game. There was a Myers shot from the blue line right off the draw, essentially. And Max Domi actually finally scores for the first time in well over 2 months, putting the Leafs up 1-0, 2 minutes and 15 seconds in. He had, it would started like look like a good game, but he takes 2 penalties that the Penguins actually, or one of them, they are able to capitalize on. That ends up giving them the lead. But Max Domi, just really happy for him. He has provided a little bit of offense in terms of assists in the last couple of weeks, but obviously his goal scoring has really, really, really dried up like a raisin. So it was nice to see him get a goal. And then the Leafs were doing really well in terms of just getting shots in. The last couple of games, basically since they've been back from the break, they have not been the better team in terms of the shot column. Now, they've still managed to win the majority of those games, which is great. But for the most part, the Leafs were not playing the kind of hockey that you're able to win in most games. Now, a couple of years ago, the Leafs didn't have to worry about their goaltending because they were simply going to outscore their problems. That's sort of what it felt like happened here today. It wasn't a great game from them defensively. I don't know if anybody really had a really good game in terms of their defense. Maybe the best person would be Jake McCabe. I mean, he gets an assist on that one goal. But the defense was having a hard time today. Now, Oliver Ekman-Larsson was back in the lineup, thank goodness, after leaving late in the game the other day. It's nice to see that he's back. We still know that Chris Tanev is still day-to-day. Apparently, we're just a couple of minutes away from Calle Jarnkrok coming back, but we've heard that started the last week or so. And we're not going to talk to the trade deadline until later on in the show here, but a couple of years ago when we lost Jake Muzzin and we were down our primary defenseman, it was very evident that we did not have the depth to cover it up. Now, I think a lot of us were kind of expecting maybe Marshall Verfai would get a call, that he would be maybe brought up into the lineup for these last couple stretches of games, if for no other reason than to see if he would be an option going into the playoffs if major injuries do happen. And for whatever reason, they're not doing that. Maybe it's because of roster construction. Maybe they believe they already know what that looks like. Whatever the reason is, the Leafs have decided that while they have made a move in signing a young prospect that we'll talk about later, the more time goes on, the more I feel like they do need to make a move for defense. And we're now on Sunday, March the 2nd, and no major trades have happened. No minor trades have really happened either. And you have to wonder, at what point does that clock start ticking awful loudly for Brad Treliving? Because the way that they played tonight was fine, but there was a number of really bad reads. There were a number of really bad turnovers that happened. Not all from the defense, but that bottom pairing of Timmins and Benoit is... You are rolling the dice every time those two gentlemen are out on the ice together. So really hoping that they make some form of move to bolster the bottom of the lineup. But before that happens, Timmins actually manages to get another goal. He gets a really, really nice wrist shot up from the top shelf from Holmberg and Nylander, putting the Leafs up 2-0 early in the game. The shots were 13-2, 10 minutes into the game. It really felt like the Leafs were going to play a different style of game than they have the last couple. Like I said, they haven't been doing a lot in terms of their quantity of shots, so it felt like the Leafs were really turning the page. But that was only the first half of the first period. Last game, it was essentially the first 40 minutes they were one team, and the last 20 minutes they were somebody else. Today they waited 10 minutes to change their minds instead. So, starting them off was Cody Glass. It was a one-timer from Blake Lizotte and Ryan Shea. Willie had tried to sort of... He had gone up into the neutral zone thinking that, the Leafs had the puck. They were trying to move it up the ice. They ended up turning it over in their own zone again. And Willie's just not able to get back fast enough. And there was a really nice one-time from Cody Glass. A minute and 2 seconds later, Ryan Raquel gets a really nice shot. It was essentially a rebound from behind the net, and Raquel was on the far side of the net. He ends up burying it. Joseph Woll tried to get over, wasn't able to get there in time. And so 10 minutes in, the Leafs are up, 2-0, and 2.5 minutes later, it is a tie game. From there, it got even worse. Max Domi took the first of two stupid penalties. He took a really bad slash, and Crosby gets it right from the face-off dot. That's 6 minutes to go from Karlsson and Rust, and then Domi takes another penalty basically 3 minutes after that one. With 4:15 to go, the Leafs managed to kill that off, but they go into, despite having a great start, they go into the first intermission down 3-2. The shots definitely in the second half of that game went into Pittsburgh's favor. By the end of it, they were down 13-16 trailing behind Pittsburgh. Into the second period, Matthews finally gets a goal, despite the fact that he has actually produced offense and contributed offense in every game since the Four Nations. And in the last 9 games, he has not looked, and we've all sort of talked about it and looked at it through weary eyes, he hasn't looked like his normal self. And considering the amount of time that he has already been off this season with injury, we're all quite concerned. And tonight, or this afternoon, my goodness, the vocabulary in the afternoon is tougher. He was finally able to get one in. A really nice pass from Matthew Nyes. It it was in and out so fast that the play almost continued. So the Leafs managed to tie it really quick. The Tang takes a tripping call. The Leafs are able to not score on that penalty. And then, of course, the momentum goes once again the other way. Bryan Rust scoring with 4:22 to go, gets the backhand. John Tavares managed to tie it before the end of the period with 55 seconds to go with a really nice breakaway pass from Jake McCabe. No one really close to him. I mean, there were a couple of guys trailing, but he is able to actually outskate players on the other team, buries it to tie it. And then I had actually started writing my intermission, what happens between the two periods, this guy right here. And I had to scratch it out because Matthew Knies scored with 0.1 seconds left. Just a unbelievable buzzer beater. They had to slow it down frame by frame. And you can't even see the actual puck. It's just a dark blur under the net, under the mesh, and the Leafs are able to actually go into the second intermission, up 5-4. The shots still in favor of Pittsburgh, but the Leafs were able to sort of score their way out of the problems that they had created for themselves. There was a very nice goal by Ricard Raquel 10 seconds in. He beats Woll clean. That goal shouldn't really have gone in. The backhand from Bryan Rust, the goal where the Leafs were down 4-3 to Pittsburgh in the second period, also not a great goal let in by Joseph Woll. The first two, he didn't really have a chance on. The second two were both, you can't let those ones in. That, like I said, it was probably one of his tougher games. As a Leaf, he has usually been incredibly steady for us, and so I'm not gonna harp on him too badly, but he was able to be bailed out by his team this time as opposed to him bailing his team out. And then, of course, that's a tie game. So we go all the way, despite the fact that JT gets another really nice breakaway. There were Go Leafs Go chants getting louder and louder in Pittsburgh. They get to overtime, and William Nylander from his own end brings it into the zone, looks off the pass, wrister from just high in the slot, top corner, 1 minute in, and the Toronto Maple Leafs on a bit of a heater since coming back. We win Saturday, we win Tuesday. You know, going into this, we win Friday. We've won 4 in a row now. Sharks tomorrow. Macklin Celebrini, Tyler Toffoli coming to town. It will be very interesting to see if the Leafs are able to replicate and maybe, play a little bit tighter and still be able to produce a bit more offense. I don't know if I would rather watch a game like this. This sort of felt like the kind of game that we would have seen a lot 2 years ago, where the Leafs were simply just outscoring their problems every time. There was not a lot of really good things to say defensively that happened tonight or today. Again, oh my gosh, tonight. But the Leafs were able to outscore their problems. They've done it before. They have really struggled to do that recently, especially this year. But 2 points are 2 points. I saw in the chat already, Matthew said, at the end of the year when all of the points are all added up, they won't look back on how the points were won, just how many points were missed. 100%. I can go back in my book here and talk about a number of games where the Leafs were the worst team on the ice and managed to come out with 2 points. So this one is another one for the doesn't matter how, it matters how many category. And it's just nice that on a Sunday afternoon where we're all waiting for spring to happen, that the Leafs can reward us with a game like that. So let's move over into the second period. I just got to write this down really quick because streaming by yourself is a little bit different than when you're with a partner. It does mean that I end up having to watch the stream afterwards. And if you're like me and you hate watching yourself talk, it's a bit of a struggle. But let's talk about the goaltending. Now, earlier in the week, on Tuesday in TD Gardens, the Leafs play against Boston. And the Leafs end up actually winning that in overtime 5-4. Now, one could argue that the Leafs allowed 4 goals in that game as well. That would be true. That is a fact. However, that night, it really felt like the Leafs were playing better defensively. There were a number of plays in that game where Stoley was the best player on the ice. Even on Friday against the Rangers, they end up winning it 3-2. lots of wins lately just by 1 goal. And again, Stoli in goal that net. He had a fantastic game. New York absolutely got goalied that night. Today, that was not the case. Pittsburgh did not get goalied. They just couldn't outscore the Leafs. It wasn't one of the games where the Leafs had been so tight defensively and then they managed to squeak off a goal when we weren't expecting it to happen, but they're sound defensively. No, they were sloppy tonight. And I would imagine that in the post-game comments, I would be shocked if Berube does not mention the fact that they had a very sloppy game. So if anybody can tell me if that happens, I'm going to apologize right now for the background noise of the cat toys that are jingling, because they're currently playing tag. And it really felt like today, Joseph Woll, we know, was ill on Friday, which is why he got the start in New York over Stolarz got the start in New York over Joseph Woll. Today he's back. I do wonder if the amount of goals that he let in could be as a result of the sickness still not letting him be 100%. I mean, he was feeling under the weather on Friday. It's now Sunday. We know that they get pumped full of many, many, many chemicals if they have to feel better. He just had a rough day. He had a rough outing of it. I mean, again, we still win, so I'm splitting hairs over a win here, but it really felt like today Joseph Woll didn't have his normal ability to track the puck as well as he does on a normal basis when he has 100% health. I don't blame him for that second goal, the goal to make it 2-2. That's just a really nice. I mean, Raquel was in a really great position, and he just manages to get to the puck and buries it before he can get over. The Crosby shot, there was a huge flurry in front of the net. The first goal, there was a massive flurry in front of the net that he wasn't able to see. But the 3-2 goal, the 4-3 goal, the backhand that Brian Rust had. He essentially just drops his shoulder, drives the net, and is able to bury it. Joseph Woll should have had that one. Now, I don't think that one game changes any person in that locker room's perspective on Joseph Woll being an unbelievable goaltender. It certainly does not change my opinion on him being a great goaltender, but there is something to say for the fact that we are getting closer to the playoffs, and nowadays, little things like that and games like that popping up, you want to see that less and less. This is already a conversation that we're having, again, March 1st. The playoffs are not for 7 weeks. But these games are the ones that are going to be under a microscope. These are the ones that the stats are going to start working their way into the, how relevant are they in the playoffs? Well, if Stoli gets really hot and Joseph Woll, now is the time where he starts getting cold, it might be. Now, hopefully this is just a one-off. I mean, the Leafs play again tomorrow, and then they don't play again till Wednesday against the Vegas Golden Knights. That will be their last game before the trade deadline. They play the Saturday afterwards. So I imagine that Stolarz will start tomorrow, and then it will be interesting to see who they pick to play against that game against Vegas. Vegas, even though they're not playing well right now, we know that they are a perennial deep into the playoff team. They will not be quiet at the trade deadline this year. I am positive of it. I mean, despite the fact that it's still 6 days away, they are always quite active, and they have their hands in every single pot in terms of trades. So it will be interesting to see who Berube chooses to put against a team that we know has a playoff style of play and coaching. So that will be Wednesday's game against Vegas. I would imagine if I was going to bet money on it, I would guess that Stolarz probably gets the next 2 starts. Starting tomorrow, I guess an argument could be made where, well, Stolarz just played twice. Joseph Woll's only played once, so maybe you give him the Wednesday day. But you got to ride the hot goalie. And so far, Anthony Stolarz has been unbelievable. So that, if I was going to be bet on that, that's where I would put my money. So let's actually and we're moving along pretty good here. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And while you're doing that, I really want to talk to you about Hyperdrive Hockey. Now, Hyperdrive Hockey is the flagship show for the Game Over Network. You can find it on the Game Over Network main hub channel. You can find it on the Game Over Network .com. Because I'll tell you what, it is one of the best fan-driven news shows that I have seen. It does have Max, it has Daphne, it has Kevin, that are able to take all of this information and put it forth to you in a way that is super fun. It's super enjoyable to relax. They're all hilarious. There's a really great sense of humor to all of them. The way they deliver the information and the way they're able to debate is actually a lot of fun to watch or to listen to. So please make sure after you check this out, go and check them out. I mean, you got lots of time left on Sunday before you got to think about work tomorrow. So go check out Hyperdrive Hockey over on the main channel. Have some fun. And that's where we can get some of the biggest stories in all of hockey. They are going to be busy on Friday when it comes to the trade deadline, so make sure you watch our shows on that day as well. So let's get over into the third period. There are 2 games to go before the trade deadline. On top of that, the Leafs have made one very small adjustment. Now, I'm saying that not because the player that they got is small. He is a nice and big 6 foot, 192 player individual from Los Angeles, California, in Borya Valis, signed yesterday to a 3-year entry-level contract, playing on the Prince George Cougars right now. This year, having played 58 games with 30 goals and 44 assists to 74 points. Nice big player. He is quite strong on the puck. There is all kinds of packages of highlights that people have already put together for avid Leaf fans like yourself and like myself, for you to go check out. Now, this is not somebody that, this is not their solution to the playoffs. At least I hope. Oh, God. It better not be. I think this is future insurance. I think this is, there is a chance that in the next 5 days, one of the rookies that we have become so very attached to might not be one of our prospects anymore. Now, I do think that on the one hand, I think this year more than any other year should be the year where the Leafs do bet the farm. They have security in net despite how the game was played today that they have not had in other years, and I think to not take advantage of that would be a terrible misjudged decision. This year, like I said, more than any in the past 5 to 10 years, feels like it. If you make the right trade, we could go further into the spring this year than we have in many moons. It would be very nice if we could lose as few of those rookies as possible. Obviously, we are very attached to both Fraser Minten and Easton Cowan. Obviously, Easton Cowan having that ridiculous point streak for the London Knights this year. We're all excited about Cowboy. And I think we all will think if we lose him, then it might be another situation just like with Trevor Moore where they're going to go on and be hugely successful and we're going to be left wondering. But, like I said, goaltending is not something where in past years we have had so much confidence in, and this year we have that. There is a part of me that thinks that this signing of Borya Valis, maybe this is backup. That way, if one of those rookies does get traded, we already have somebody that could come up and actually make a difference. He is the 3rd highest scoring player on that team right now. The other 2 players, one of them I believe is a Flyers pick. It's a first and second round pick regardless. The Leafs have 2 more games until the trade deadline. I would be interested to see if today's game impacts those decisions. The more time is going on, the more it sounds like Braden Shen will not be becoming a Toronto Maple Leaf, which I'm a little bit fine with. We still have not heard anything about Scott Laughton. I know that there was a big trade yesterday. I know that Seth Jones is now has now been traded to the Panthers. I know Matthew Tkachuk has now been put on Injured reserve, I think it's actually LTIR. How convenient. It'll be interesting to see if he gets better at miraculously in 7 weeks. I'm getting nervous. Are you getting nervous? Put it down in the chat. Tell me if you're nervous right now. I mean, really, it's March 2nd. This upcoming Friday is the trade deadline. We have not signed John Tavares. We have not signed Matthew Knies. We have not signed Mitch Marner. There is a remote, regardless how small, chance that they may take a shot at one of the other large players that are in play and could be going to UFA this year. But the closer we get to the trade deadline, the more nervous I'm getting. Not just about the trade deadline, but about the playoffs and about the offseason. And I want this team to make a splash. It would be great if the Leafs could make a trade that would wow us. That would be fabulous. We are, like I said, over the third period. Make sure you please get your questions down in the chat. Or if you have a player that you want to talk about, or if you have a trade that the Leafs would like to have. One of the most common questions that I have actually seen on social media for the last couple of days has been let me pull it up here. Basically, what would you be willing to give up if the Leafs were able to make a large trade? Oh, here we go. The Ladies Talking Leafs, because I love that podcast. If you have not listened to it, you really should. Asking Leaf fans to put their GM hat on and tell us if the Leafs were going to get a top 4 D-man or forward at the deadline, who would you be willing to give up? Have a happy Saturday. Cowan in a 2026, Minton in a 2026, Knies or McMahon in a prospect, or other leaving comments. I said Domi Benoit in a 2027 first, because I would not like to have our 2026 first round pick go to another team. We know that draft is supposed to be absolutely wild, and I would be remiss if I thought that the Leafs would absolutely end up watching a fabulous player go to another team with our draft pick, because that's how the world works. I want to do everything possible to not give up Minton and Easton Cowan. However, at this point, there is not a single person on this team that I am not willing to trade in exchange for a deep run to the playoffs, especially if that person has term. There was quite literally nobody, with the exception of William Nylander and Austin Matthews, that is untouchable to me. I love John Tavares. I want him to resign here. I am confident that he will. If it wins us the Stanley Cup, we can sign him in the offseason afterwards. I love Mitch Marner. He is from here. He has so much heart. He won us the championship at the Four Nations a couple weeks ago. He was the assist. He provided the assist that won that whole tournament. And I would trade him in a heartbeat if it meant that we won the cup this year. And that sucks, because I love this team, and there's so many people that have come and gone and, had a roster spot on this team that I wish could be here when we do win it. The Zach Hymans, the Nazem Kadris, the Tyler Bozak. He ended up getting a cup anyway, but, there's a lot of players that have come through the locker room in the last couple of years. And I feel a little bit sad that I have so much apathy at this point. But sports are like that. There is no one, not even Minton, not even Cowan, that I would rather keep than having a real chance at the Stanley Cup. So let's get to some of your questions here in just a second. That is my rant about the trade deadline. Like I said, we'll be live tomorrow. Hopefully there's some news. Hopefully the Leafs have made a trade by then. We know that there are now a number of players that are being held out for trade-related reasons to keep them healthy. So let's get over into the overtime period. Let's get to your questions and everything in the chat. Make sure, please, if you could hit like and subscribe. Below this, actually, before we move over into the overtime period, there's also the link to the Game Over Network, our website, where you can check out the store. You can check out all of the other Game Over Network stuff that we have there. We have Hyperdrive Hockey. We have intros and bios about all of the people that we have there. There are also links for you to go and support us. Like I said, we have the Patreon that's up there. We have the link for LaRouche, which is a company based out of Quebec, which helps give new businesses startups and gives us access to all kinds of government grants. And it would go a really long way if you're able to, help some local artists and broadcasting here on Game Over. And if you can't, if you're only able to provide the moments you're sharing with me now, then thank you for that. So let's get over into overtime. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. I want to see how Robertson does against Vegas before I move his stock up. Yeah, now Matthew, the last couple of games, do you think he's improved? I think not this game that just happened, but on Friday he had a really rough game. Woll made himself look like up to the backup today. Stolarz should be the starter for the playoffs as of now. Yeah, Matthew, I think it's going to be this kind of ping-ponging back and forth until playoffs, until a clear leader has carved himself out a spot. And right now, this week, it's Anthony Stolarz for me too. Thank you for being here in the chat. Not nervous. Music for Al, frequent flyer. Thanks for coming, pal. Too many teams are holding on to their players because they could make the playoffs. We'll see if anything is available by the end of the week. David W., who is always coming to Game Over as well. Thank you for being here, David. The Leafs need to make players who know how to make defense. Yet just what trade the Leafs make going into the trade deadline remain to be determined. Yeah. Aren't you glad to know we can still outscore our problems when we need to? Yeah, man. I'm really glad to see that William Nylander got a goal tonight. Austin Matthews needed a goal tonight. It sort of felt like a game of people that needed one. Max Domi to start off, obviously. Connor Timmins getting his first goal since November 9th, which is just wild. Like I said, William Nylander has had a little bit of a rough stretch since coming back from the Four Nations. None of those players are playing as bad as Evan Bouchard right now. Just saying. Matthews needed a goal. He needed one. He's looked a little bit funny since coming back. He definitely needed one. Thank you for the question, Luke. Cowan is a tougher trade for me right now than Minton. I agree. I think if we lose Cowan, we will be more upset than if we lose Minton 5 years from now. Minton could go if they thought he was an option. He would be playing right now. Yes, absolutely. Yet David W. again. Yet Tavares and Marner have improved themselves in the consistent Stanley Cup playoff performers for the Leafs. And if the Leafs don't make it to the 2025 conference final, I hope both will be gone this coming off season. By then we will have indeed been enough to call the so-called core five. I don't think that there's any way that they move off of Austin Matthews. I think that there is a chance that they might end up walking away to Mitch Marner. I think that if it goes to January or July 1st, yes, there is a number of people that are willing to give Mitch Marner $14 million. I am not one of them. And the reality is other teams might. I could see Columbus going after Mitch Marner. It's close enough to where he lives now that when the baby gets here, he could make that work. I could see who else has a bunch of things coming up. I could actually see Boston going after Mitch Marner. I think they have a couple players whose contracts are expiring this year as well. I could see them making that as a move. I will say Mitch Marner has redeemed himself a little bit, David, in terms of the pressure and his ability to score and contribute under pressure. I actually think that Four Nations tournament did wonders for Mitch Marner's confidence. I also feel it did a very, very big, I think it was a sledgehammer to Austin Matthews' confidence. I think it was a sledgehammer. I think that that's part of the reason why he hasn't played super well since we got back. I mean, it's been over a week now, but everybody else is still talking about it. Why aren't we? I would be remiss if I didn't say I think that everything that happened in the Four Nations actually affected Matthews more than it affected Marner. I think Marner benefited in a very positive way, and I think Matthews, I think there is a part of him that those demons under his bed, I think that there's a new one that's joined and is under there. So, I hope that he conquers both of them, but I think that Mitch will be a little bit better this year. I think his play since coming back, and I think his play in that tournament, in that big moment, I think that kind of experience galvanizes him a bit more in terms of his confidence. But I guess we'll see. Moving right along. Ooh, Zach Payne. I know you. Welcome, Zach. One of the other hosts in Game Over Toronto. I'll be willing to give Mitch 13, but no more than what Austin is making. Cap going up and Tavares, cap hit going down makes it a lot more palatable. TBD about Tavares, Marner, Morgan Riley coming this offseason. But it all depends on the playoffs as always, 100%. Tavares, I'm confident in saying he's back. Yeah, I don't think Tavares is going to leave. I think that they'll get it done. There's enough desire there to get it done. He cares less about money at this point. I don't think he wants to leave another long-term team again. Just a guess. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the playoffs. I mean, the reality is if we go 4 rounds deep, if we make it to a conference final and Mitch Marner scores the overtime winner to put us in the Stanley Cup final, we will all be saying give him whatever he wants. Thing is that they have not had a whiff of that. Not even to quote Scar, you wouldn't get a sniff out of me. They haven't gotten close. So, as always, we'll see how it is. We'll check back in about 7 weeks. Game 3 of the playoffs, maybe we'll take the temperature again. But let's wrap this up. Nice short episode. Enjoy your Sunday afternoon. Please make sure you hit like. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you tell all your friends. You can find me on Blue Sky at Lauren in the 6th. You can follow Zach. You can follow Dom. We have all of the links to everybody's social media is down below. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or anything that you want us to talk about coming up this week and any of our other shows. We will be back tomorrow evening as the Leafs take on the San Jose Sharks. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Zach with one last question. This is a Matthew and I's buzzer beater, Zach. Here's one. How concerned are you about the way the Leafs are playing? Winning, yes, but are they winning the right way? No, they're not. And yes, I'm terribly concerned. I don't think you can score. I don't think you can win games like that in the playoffs. I think that they might be using a little bit of that winning at all costs juju maybe a month early. I am concerned. I think that if you're not concerned, then you've got your head buried in the sand. How can you not be concerned? Or you're new. If you're new and you don't know any better, then I don't feel bad. You're just naive, and I envy you because you're not apathetic. At this point, I am nervous, and we will see what happens. So, thank you, Zach, for the last-minute question. This has been Game Over Toronto. The Maple Leafs win. William Nylander, 1 minute into overtime, finally putting the Penguins down in the water. 6-0 over Pittsburgh. We will be back tomorrow evening after the Leafs face the Sharks back home. Celebrating until you're coming to town. Have yourself a wonderful Sunday, everybody, and we will see you Monday night.